What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Next Deal podcast. I'm your host, Justin Dossie, joined by Vince Hall, as always.
Yo.
Today, we have a special guest, Carlos Saez, a client of ours out of Georgia and Florida, has been in real estate investing for about 15 years, has overseen over 1,000 deals. There's so many different things that were on your intake form, including that you have the same name as a terrorist and get flagged sometimes and have to do some stuff. So welcome to the show, man. It's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me. I might actually be the terrorist, and we just don't know, and that's just kind of my cover story. But it's 100. It's 100. When I had to ask my wife something interesting about myself because I don't actually know the answer to that one. That was her best answer for something interesting. So it's pretty much all I got, and I get flagged all the time for it.
I think it's a good icebreaker, personally.
Yeah, we're gonna put this up on YouTube, and they're gonna take it down.
Yeah.
Any minute now, somebody might just come tackling through the window and just take me out of here.
Yeah, and if they do, we'll just edit this part out and repost it.
It could be one of those things that goes viral. Like that's what I'm here for. I'm here to give the unique content and bring some fun.
Yes, and I do have to point out every time I'm on a call with Carlos talking about mail or whatever we're talking about, he's always jealous of our neon signs here. So he did get himself a piece of paper that says "cool neon sign" in the background. If you're watching on YouTube, and if not, you're missing out because
this is called balling on a budget. This is called balling on a budget. All right,
good, dude. You do have a blue neon glow behind you, though.
Everything is on a budget. That is just one little light bulb back there. I couldn't compete with your guys' backgrounds, so I did my best today. And Justin said if I work in ballpoint marketing rocks my socks, into this podcast, he said he would buy me a new neon sign. I'm just saying it's nothing official. He may or may not have actually said that, but it's just
I can buy one for you. This one was not terribly expensive.
It's the placeholder.
I can help you.
Either is mine. If you were to have a neon sign behind you, what would you have back there?
Ooh, that's such a good question. It seems like it should be the company logo, right? Anything else would be a little
mine's
selfish.
Not.
Yeah, I know, but yours. I started following you on Instagram, and I know we got to talk aliens one of these days because clearly there's some alien passion there. It was in your bio, and you've got one back there. So
yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm gonna have to come up with something cool. It could be a house, it could be the logo, but there's got to be a neon sign in here. Something soon.
Oh man, that's great. Well, appreciate you coming on. To kind of start, would you mind just giving a little bit of background on yourself? I know your background, but for those of you who are listening and don't know Carlos, just tell us a little bit about kind of like how you got started and what your experience has been so far.
Yeah, I mean, in real estate in general, I accidentally house hacked. I think before it was cool. It was back in 2008, and that's kind of what sparked my passion for real estate. Bought a house when I was in college because it was kind of just like it felt obvious at the time and didn't really realize there was this whole other world out there. I'm like, hey, me and my roommates are paying this like shady landlord like all this money every single month. Like, what if I could be the shady landlord? And sure enough, like I was the definition of the 2008 mortgage crisis. I was 21. I had good credit. Like I got a credit card when I was 18. I was always responsible with it. I sold my motorcycle, then put that down as a down payment on a house. And I think back then I was able to buy it with like 3% down or something. It was a $150,000 house. It was all kinds of first-time home buyer credits. I don't know. I was running a brewery and a bar at the time. Maybe I was making $50,000 like on paper. And they're like, well, you kind of qualify, but you kind of don't. Like, are you going to make more money soon? And I'm like, I don't know what kind of question that is, but yeah, I would always assume that I'm going to make more money. And sure enough, they were like, if you can sign off on this documentation that you feel like you're going to get a raise or you're going to have an increase in your income by end of year, we'll get you approved. I'm like, that's the biggest joke that I've ever seen, but yeah, I'll sign right there. So that was in 2008. So like when people were like, they were just giving mortgages to everyone. I was everyone. So that was where I realized like, and I never defaulted. So at least I wasn't one of those people from 2008 that defaulted. And that kind of sparked my passion for real estate and kind of realizing, my roommates, it was a 3-bedroom house. My roommates were paying my entire mortgage. I should have been smart and saved. And I would love to sit here and be like, yeah, I started in 2008. Now I own 1,500 rentals. That is not the case. And I just became kind of hood rich. I bought like multiple cars and all kinds of stuff because I was in college still. And I was like, this is great. I have no rent. I have no bills. Like, this is the best. And that just kind of sparked it for a long time. And then, I was in college running a bar and a brewery, and kind of felt like hospitality was that thing that I always wanted to do. And realized later on it just wasn't. The hours are brutal. And when I moved after college, I met my wife. We moved down to South Florida. And her one deal with me was, because it was always the easiest job for me to get, was like, if I want to run a hospitality concept, like I can make a lot of money, I'm good at it and all those things. She was like, I'll move down there with you, but you cannot stay in hospitality and work these hours. And that was probably the best thing that anyone has ever done for me or told me. I'm still married to her to this day, so that's a good thing too. But I ended up applying for a job at a real estate wholesale company in Fort Lauderdale. Had no idea what real estate wholesaling was at all. It was an operations manager position. Ops has always been kind of like my niche, my specialty. And I had no idea. Even in the interview process, I'm like hoping I get the job, but I fully didn't understand what I would be doing there. And started working there. And then, we were 23 floors up in Fort Lauderdale overlooking the ocean. And to me, it was like the coolest thing in the world. I was so excited about it. And that's where I cut my teeth in wholesale. We were doing back then maybe 20 or 30 deals a month. And then I worked my way up to VP of operations and then eventually COO. And, I'd like to say we were one of the largest wholesalers in the Southeast at the time. When I was there, we were doing maybe 60 to 80 deals a month by the time I left. Wow. And it was just wild. And that's how I've seen just so many transactions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Long-winded response to how I ended up in real estate and kind of where that passion came from. But
yeah. How big was the team when you guys were doing 60 to 80 deals a month?
We were around, if I remember, it was about 30, 35 agents. They were all 100% commission on the phones. And that was a mix of either acquisitions or disposition agents. You only did one role when you were there.
Okay.
And then we probably had another maybe 15 people that were, standard W-2 on salary, like support staff, from VPs of marketing to VPs of finance. It was a pretty large team. We were building it to scale it. It just wholesale's an interesting beast. As you start scaling it, a lot of things work, and you had to start getting into a lot of different areas. But yeah, we were probably about 45 to 50 employee or total team members at that point. And we were doing it. We were located in South Florida and doing it all throughout Florida and Georgia. We dabbled in Maryland, Nevada, Arizona, and California, but pretty much stayed to Florida and Georgia for the most part.
That's wild. 60 to 80 deals a month. I think the person that I know that does the most, they do like 40 a month.
It's a lot. It was a big team with a ridiculous marketing spend. Everything was a ridiculous spend, and it was a lot of fun. But it was also, everything was a double closing. So whenever I look at it, it's like, oh, you were doing 60 transactions, but like on paper, you were doing 120 a month. And every transaction had its own special nuances and things that you've just never seen before. So that's what kind of makes it fun now. It's like, people are like, I've never seen this before. I'm like, I have. And it's like from title issues to crazy sellers. Right now we're buying a trailer from a porn star in Florida, and it's just not that shocking anymore. So it's
must not have been that good if she's living in a trailer.
She's retired now. She's retired. She's probably. Yeah, I think you retire from the industry, you get kicked out of the industry. I don't really know. And in fairness, she had 2 trailers on the property. And she goes to us day of closing, so I'm still dealing with that one technically, but did not surprise me whatsoever in dealing with it. So that experience, and Justin, you and I have talked about it a lot. Vince, we alluded to it the other day. It's like, that experience has been a gift and a curse, right? Doing that many transactions and doing all that stuff was amazing. And it made, it could almost give like a false sense of confidence too, because you're like, well, did that before. And, granted, we had a massive team that we don't have now, but, you do a lot of things because you're like, well, it worked then, or it worked at that scale. So it's like now figuring out how to do it at like a little bit smaller scale. And because I have no desire to get up to that amount of deals, or maybe not that amount of people. I think that's a big thing. And I love people. I love building teams. I just don't want to deal with that anymore.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it was. And probably why I stopped there was for that reason too. It's just a lot. And, it eventually burns you out a little bit dealing with that many people, that many problems, that kind of scale, and keeping that type of beast of a business that's doing, 10 mil a year. You got a lot of families to feed, a lot of overhead, and keeping that alive and keeping that going every day, it wears on you.
Yeah. What was your conversation like with your wife, like the exit out of that company to start your own?
That's a good question. It's it was good. It was good timing, and it was, she's amazing because and I'm saying this even if she didn't listen to this, she's very supportive and just very trusting of me. For whatever reason, this woman just looks at me and goes, "You'll figure it out." At the time, I was really lucky. My wife was crushing it at work. So this was like in the heyday where it was like what is it called? Dinks, double income, no kids.
Yep.
So we were like living the dream. Like we were both making great money. We didn't have the expenses of a child. We had a dog. We had a beautiful house and all this stuff. And it was just kind of one of those things. I think she saw it on me too. She's like kind of knew like, hey, you're just kind of like burnt out, and you're not your best self, is what she would tell me. So when I was like, hey, I think it's time to try and do this on my own. We'd started flipping a couple houses. It was working well. And she was making enough where it's like I could stop. We would have to adjust our lifestyle a little bit. But she was making enough where like I could make practically nothing and we would still be okay. So it was kind of a cool way for me to take all of that risk and it be like kind of calculated, because I love risk. I think it keeps me alive. I love like almost like the struggle of certain things. So I like taking on those types of things. And so I was able to kind of like float around a little bit. And like my wife still to this day jokes, because like I started working from home at that point, started our own company and started flipping and stuff, but I wasn't busy all the time. So like I'd go out on the boat in the middle of the afternoon on Tuesday while she's like in the office, like busting her ass. She was driving from Fort Lauderdale to Coconut Grove every day. And, it was like, we kind of traded off where, it worked. And, now she gets to stay at home with our daughter. So we kind of say it was like the trade-offs, like she busted her ass so that I could start the company and do all these things. And now, then we realized when we had our daughter, like her working as much as she was working and all that stuff just wasn't going to work for how we wanted to raise her. And now I'm the one in the office every day. And, she's got the harder job for sure at home with our daughter. Anyone who is a stay-at-home mom, like, holy shit. And she gave up a really impressive career to go and do that. So we kind of look at it like we do these trade-offs, and like everything that we do is just like teamwork. What's the best thing for right now for our family, for risk profile, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I like that. That's awesome. I think Vince and I are also very lucky in that aspect, where we also have very supportive significant others too.
Yeah.
My wife's always been that very, very similar to how you said, like, you'll figure it out. Like, yeah, do it. You'll figure it out. Like, I was before I grew up and decided I was going to be an entrepreneur, I got fired from like 9 jobs. Like, I just was not a good employee. I had some success at certain places, but I also just didn't know what I wanted to do, you know? And, no matter what the idea was when I wanted to go to culinary school, yeah, cool. You'll figure it out. I'm like, all right, cool. Then when that didn't work, after working at a restaurant, I was like, I'm broke as hell and I'm miserable. I'm going to go do this. Cool. Yeah. Let's make it happen. Same thing to coming into entrepreneurship when I took like a $60,000 a year pay cut, from like 100 down to 35. Like, it was one of those things where it's just like, can we pay our bills? Yeah. All right, cool. Let's figure it out. So
keep chugging.
Yeah. Couldn't do it without having that support. So that's super
which is a gift and a curse too, because now you don't want to let them down. You're like, well, they believed in me. They believed in me. Yeah. So it's like you don't want to be the fluke and be like, oh shit, like they were wrong, I was wrong. Like now we're in trouble. But it seems to be working. All of our internet's working, and we've got some cool podcast mics in front of us. So something is working right.
Something's working. Yeah. I love it. We talked about it a little bit yesterday when we were prepping for this call, but you coming from an operations background, this is something that I would love to talk about, because I hear it all the time from people of, people that aren't doing many deals, right? They're trying to get 1 deal a month is kind of where they're at. And I need my systems in place. My systems got to be in place, and blah, 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 blah. Processes, systems, all that kind of stuff. And we talked about it a little bit, but like my mindset on it is like, you should not be worried about that at all if you're not making any money.
100%.
Yeah. And it's such an interesting thing, because it's like you get to a point in your business where you need those systems and processes in order to grow and scale. But it's like at first it almost comes back to like analysis paralysis, where it's like, I'm doing all the things, but what's making me money? Like, let me just focus on these things and not do anything that's actually making me any money. So in your experience, when does that kind of stuff actually start to come into play in this business?
Systems and processes. How long do we have for this podcast? Because I could go all day.
Yeah.
But if you're doing one, and it's one of those things. I think systems and processes sounds cool, right? It
Yeah.
sounds like you have more
It's
of
a
a
buzzword.
legitimate. Yeah, exactly. That's the fancy way of saying it. I think it makes it sound like you have a more legitimate business. You might know more of what you're doing because you're like, I have all these systems and processes, and when I do this, 5 things happen over here, and it sounds really cool. If you're doing one deal a month, I don't think you know what your systems and processes need to be because you're doing it's just such an infrequent amount, and especially if you're doing even wholesale flipping, anything with this, it's so dynamic. Every deal is so different, and there's so many different nuances to stuff that your one deal is going to be different than your next deal next month. I would say, especially once you start putting a team around you, or you start to see like there starts to be some cracks, you start to drop the ball in certain places. Start implementing mild systems to put those things in place to make sure that you're not dropping the ball. But to your point, you have a finite amount of energy. Like you can a finite amount of capabilities, energy, and all these things. Like if you're doing one deal a month, like that 100% needs to be in how do I get that from 1 to 2, from 2 to 3, and then you can start having people come on and help you, even if they're fractional people that you're hiring VAs. Like that's where you can start scaling and start putting those people in place. But other than that, like your number one goal needs to be producing income and doing whatever it takes to get that. Because if you're doing one deal a month, it's really easy to do 0 deals a month. And how far can you go if you keep blanking? And depending on your marketing spend or how you're getting your deals, like not a lot of people can blank for a couple months and survive. So it's like you need to build up that pipeline as much as you can, and it might be sloppy and it might be a little messy. And I hate sloppiness. I hate not having everything perfectly aligned and in a row. I'm a sucker for Asana and to-do lists and processes. And if we can automate it, we automate it. But it's also, we have 5 agents doing acquisitions and multiple agents doing dispositions and people doing the operations coordination for us. So we can sit back now and look at it. But even so, like Jason and I, sometimes we get kind of stuck in like, how do we optimize this process? But it's like, wait, were we focusing on our pipeline enough that month?
Right.
Because we're putting in all these new systems and stuff. And sometimes we have to stop ourselves and be like, no new software for a little while, no new processes, like back it down. And it's cool because some days you're like, okay, well, we're picking up deals, we're selling deals, and I'm not doing anything because all of those things are working. But it takes a level to get there. And I think going back to what we used to do, because Jason and I worked together at our old company, we were so process driven because you had so many agents that everything had to be super linear, super automated, or it would have been chaos. You can't close that many. You can't acquire, sell, and close that many deals a month without just a plethora of systems and processes.
And
so
double close on all those deals.
Yeah, that comes into all of the money, and that's it's kind of funny. It's almost like the double closes sometimes were easier, and it's just having a really good title company. We've been really fortunate with that. And just knowing what you're looking for, knowing what you're asking, and knowing how to deal with the title companies to make sure that you're protected and you don't end up closing on a shit deal on accident because your end buyer doesn't fund or something like that. So the coordination of all that stuff, that's the part that's been really easy for us. I think getting back down into like the roots and doing things at like a smaller scale again, and that's been kind of those growing pains for us. But to me, I love the challenge. Like I'm like a sucker for like a good challenge. And like, if you put my back up against the wall, love that. Like when things are too easy, like it's not as much fun. There's probably something mental up there to make me feel that way. But to wrap back, I would stick to money making activities. Like write a note and put it on your computer. Like, is this making me money today? Like, is automating that going to help you at one deal? No, because the second you do your next deal, you're like, that system doesn't work anymore because it only worked on that deal with that one seller and that one transaction. So I think I would probably say at 2 to 3, you should probably start getting like a little bit more organized and start having like, you'll start figuring out a flow. 5+, like you're doing a solid number. Like it's also, there's a fine line between the systems and processes and bringing in someone to help you. Because I think that's what so many solopreneurs or small companies do. They try and do everything themselves, not realizing that like you need to delegate to elevate. And that's always a hard thing to swallow. You're like, oh, well, I can do it myself. Why would I pay this person to take money out of my pocket? But hypothetically, that should work. That can elevate you for more money making activities, get you out of the weeds, and allow you to grow your business. And I think that's always, it's kind of like 2 steps back, take 1 step forward. You're going to make a little bit less, but you're going to hope that by putting yourself in the right seat, you're going to be able to grow it.
Totally. Yeah. And I think a lot of a lot of business owners in general, even if it's not real estate related, they build these systems and processes so early because they don't want the system to they don't want stuff to fall through the cracks, right? They don't want stuff to fail. They don't want mistakes to be there. And the funny thing is no matter how good your systems are, shit's still going to happen.
Sometimes more so because you think it's like working, and then you're not checking on it as much. You're not as like hands on, and you're
Set
like,
it and forget it.
oh shit, that email actually didn't trigger that I thought was going to be an auto response, and then you're realizing like certain amount of days went by, and like it happens all the time when you start building these elaborate systems. Well, then you have to maintain those elaborate systems and make sure that they're working properly, and that's a whole battle in itself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's funny. We did that one time here at Ballpoint where we had it was for confirmation emails for like a certain part of an order, and there was something weird with the API on it that we didn't catch. We weren't looking. I'll be honest, we weren't even looking for it. We weren't checking for it.
Set it and forget it.
Yeah, it was like sending out like 9 confirmation emails for an order, and we're like, and then we had people start to reach out, and they're like, heck, I got like 9 confirmation emails on this. Like, that's probably a fluke. Yep. And then the next person happens, we're like, maybe it's not a fluke. And then, but it's one of those things. If you're not checking those or maintaining those or managing those, and it's, I think something that a lot of people also don't realize is when they build these systems, hoping that stuff's not going to break, just by the nature of business and growth, everything's going to have to be redone at some point, right? Like it's 3x and 10x is usually what we've seen. And what I've talked about on the podcast before is like your business grows by 3x or grows by 10x, you're usually having to completely revamp everything and implement new systems and softwares and things like that to keep up because you're just at a different level now.
Yep.
And it's the most frustrating thing in the world for me when I go to RIAs and I'll see the same person that was there last month. I'm like, hey, how's it going? So good. I got all my systems and processes finally set up. Like, cool. How many deals are you doing? None. Got it.
But I am ready. I am ready. When that deal comes in, I'm going to click these things, and the process flawless.
Yeah, right. And it will work. Have you tested it? No, but
I can't get any deals.
System and processes involve making offers.
Yes, exactly. Is it involve picking up the damn phone or sending out the mail or going to an appointment? Something.
It's one of those things that also, like, I believe that people gravitate towards the things that they like to do the most. So you might start to realize you're like, wow, I really like setting up systems and processes, but I hate getting on the phone and negotiating contracts. Well, yeah. You might be in the wrong business, or you have the wrong business partner if you have a partner, or you need to hire somebody that's going to get on the phones for you so you can do that. Like, personally, as much as like I get told all the time, like, talk a lot, I talk fast, I'm outgoing, like I hate getting on the phones. I actually hate sales, yet own a sales organization. Like, hate it.
Yeah.
Put me in front of systems and processes, and I love it. I love getting organized. I love helping people with their organization. Like, it's like my true passion. So I have a business partner who's good at sales, who enjoys sales. We have people who work for us who do sales. So I don't have to do it. And it's just like when I worked at the brewery, I had no idea how to make beer, but I ran the brewery and the bar that everybody drank the beer at, but I had no idea how to do it. Mm-hmm. And I have acquired some deals. I've gotten on the phone before, and I've gotten deals under contract. I have sold deals before, but very, 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 very few comparative to how many I've been a part of. But so if you're not good at it and you find yourself gravitating towards really making the system, then okay, then cool. But find someone who's going to actually bring in the revenue for you then, whether that you partner with somebody, and that's a whole other thing, is choosing, the right business partner to grow with, or hire somebody that's going to do it for you. Because I think we'll all naturally gravitate towards where we're most comfortable and what we feel we're best at.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah, that's definitely Matt and I.
With your business partner, Jason, you guys worked together for a long time before you went into business together, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's something too, I think is such a good thing to talk about for folks too, because I have friends that are like, hey, I just met this guy, I'm going to partner with him and we're going to do deals together. Like, I wouldn't start there. Like, let's maybe JV a deal, right? Like do it where you're not tied down and married to this person. But talk a little bit about, if you can, just kind of how that progressed over time from working together to when you guys decided, like, hey, I think we've got something here if we put this together.
Yeah, it's funny. He was the one that interviewed me when I
Oh,
first
okay.
went to start with the company, because he was the VP of sales. So he interviewed me. We both went to FSU. Like the interview went off the rails real quick. Like we basically became friends. I'd like to say like in the interview.
Yeah.
So I knew I didn't have to worry about him. It was the CEO that I was still working on. And yeah, we got to work together for 5 years. So it was one of those things where it's like you alluded to it almost being like before you get married, and it was kind of that. Like we dated, we hung out, before we moved in together and got married. So it was like we knew each other's quirks. We also have always been very open. We were fortunate in our last company that we focused a lot on mental health. We did retreats with therapists and stuff like that, and really focused on where our strengths and weaknesses were, both business wise and both personal. So we knew each other on a really, really good level. And then our wives became friends. We were traveling together. So it became very, very natural progression that, we have differing skill sets, but we have very similar visions. And that is, I think, like a cheat code to getting a good business partner is either, and not everybody has that luxury, right? You can't say like, hey, I got to work with for 5 years. I became really good friends with the person. And then now we have a really good business partnership where like literally like you can be having a really bad day and they'll be like, hey, I got this today. Or, hey, you're on vacation. Like, don't dare pick up your phone. I will lock you out of Salesforce so that you can spend time with your family. To the same thing of like when you disagree, like, that you can like go at it and it's going to be all good because like, each other, like, you just have that comfort level. And 100%, I say it to people all the time because I see so many people like partner up because again, business partnership, like it just feels like a buzzword and it feels like cool and whatever. They can destroy you.
It can be comforting too, where you're like, I'm not in this alone. I'm
Yeah,
not the only person. Like we both have to fail,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
not
Well,
just me.
it was like from Bad Boys. We ride together, we die together. Bad Boys.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and it makes it better because when we're crushing it, like it's fun. It's fun to have that ride with somebody because you can't always. I don't always like to talk about money with a lot of people. So it's like to have that relationship with somebody, and I'm happy to whenever anybody wants to talk about it, but it's like when you're crushing it, like you don't want to be out there like, yeah, I'm doing all these things, like I can do this, but like I can talk to him and I can be like, dude, this is amazing. Or when things are really bad, you are not alone and you can be honest and be like, man, this really sucks. So I don't think enough people admit that sometimes it sucks. And entrepreneurship
Yeah.
sounds super cool. And so many people want to pretend that it is just like amazing and you are doing all these incredible things, but it sucks a lot of the time. And to have somebody with you on like the highs and lows makes it fun. But yeah, like if I was had to get into another business partnership because he walked out, uh, you know got hit by a train tomorrow. We got a train right outside, so I just heard it go by. But I would 100%. You got to tiptoe into it. Like you just don't meet the girl at the bar and go move in with her and bring her home to mom the next day. You guys date. You guys go on a couple things, and you'll realize that there's a reason why you marry one person but you dated a lot because it just doesn't always work out, even if they seem really great. So if you're doing wholesale, do some JVs. If you're flipping some houses, do one off flips before you start going into like, hey, we're gonna go open up bank accounts together and lines of credit together, and we're gonna be like
Yeah.
stuck with each other for a while because that it's probably easier to get divorced in some senses than it is to get out of a really bad business
Oh yeah.
partnership.
Oh yeah.
We're fortunate now. I mean, we're stuck with each other for a while. We own properties together. We're tied in together. I mean, he probably knows more about my bank accounts than I do, and we have that kind of like close relationship where it's knows what each other's risk tolerance is as well. I'm definitely the riskier one, but it's nice because he'll push back and balance that out. Because I would probably just be like all gas, no brake, and would
Yeah.
just go completely broke. And then probably vice versa for him. He would take a lot less risks if it wasn't me pushing. So we create a really good balance where we have a healthy level of risk, enough to push both of us for out of our comfort zones. So having that type of balance, not just like, hey, you like real estate, I like real estate too. Let's go try this.
Let's order
Knowing that
Yeah.
you're
t-shirts.
picking a good business partner. Have you guys have either of you been in a bad business partnership yet?
Yep. I have. Yeah, and luckily, we made, and I've done this on any other partnerships because I mean, I'm part owner in like, I don't know, 4 companies at this point. And some of them are just like smaller partnerships, right? But the first time we ever did this, when we signed our partnership agreement, we put a clause in there that at the 1 year mark, if it wasn't working for whatever reason, we could all just head our separate ways. And we exercised that right at 1 year. And so now anytime we've gotten into any partnerships now, because the main one is my brother and I, right? Like
Right.
I've known him for 30 years, right?
You've known him your whole life.
I've known him forever, right? We've now been in business together for like 7 years together. And like you said, there's tough moments, there's challenging moments. We don't always see things the same way, but like you said, he's more apt to like, I want to implement 19 things at once. And I'm like, okay, well, hold on. Let's rein it in and make sure we're doing things that are effective, right? And we can put some ideas out there in the future. But vice versa, he'll pull me up and say, hey, let's push a little harder here and not be complacent. I'm like, okay, that's fair. Didn't even realize I was doing it.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, luckily the one, and I don't even want to say it was a bad partnership, but it wasn't, they weren't holding up their end of the deal and weren't working the way they were supposed to. We were losing money on deals, and it was just like, hey, we can't keep dumping money into this. Like it's just not working. So, luckily we had that, but I have a friend who is an attorney, and all he does is separate bad business partnerships. And
like a divorce attorney,
it's a fucking nightmare. Yeah.
Wow.
Divorce attorney for business partners. And he's here in St. Louis. And he's like, it is a nightmare. He's like, it is worse than divorces. He's like, because there's so many things entangled.
Yep.
It's very emotional because it always comes down to money. And there's always money and assets and all that kind of stuff you have to separate and all that kind of stuff. He's like, so, and he's the reason I put that clause in there. He's like, because it was before I did that. And he was like, don't go into a partnership without some sort of out if you don't know you want to be with that person for the next 10 years. He's like, otherwise, you're going to spend a shit ton of money and you're going to be stressed out and annoyed, and it's probably going to destroy that relationship with that person. Where the partnership that we exited, I still have a good relationship with him as a friend.
And that's what's important is being, especially because everyone has the tendency to go into partnership with their friends first, because you hire your friends first, or family, like it's where your comfort level is, and you know them the best. You assume that they're going to screw you over the least. But
then they're going to care as much as you because they know you.
Yeah. But it is also the ones that, like, when they go south, it's like you still want to preserve that friendship because you were friends before, or like you can't go to the family picnic because you and Ryan start hating each other. Like then is it really worth it? And then the whole other part about, like, we're all dads here, like the business partnerships and just everything that happens at work. You got to try and keep it at work as much as possible, and that's easier said than done a lot of times. But it's like, if that business partnership is weighing you down, and you go home and you're not on your A game for your kids or for your wife, like it's unfair to them as well. So being in a healthy business partnership is important for you and your own sanity, but then making sure that you're not taking it home and then everyone else is suffering because you went to a shit partnership.
Right. Yeah. No joke.
Yeah. And Carlos, you and I are just now Instagram friends. So
it's official.
Prior to, real estate for me, I was a teacher. And I remember, wanting to get into wholesaling. Ryan actually specifically told me I wasn't ready. I just remember it. He actually sent me a book. He's like, read this first. And then I read it in like a weekend, and I was like, okay, I'm done. And he's like, well, here's another one, but I got into the retail side of things first, and then, decided that was just absolutely not for me, real quick, but did do started a business with a couple of buddies, and we sent our first round of ballpoint marketing. It took one round of mail for me to go, nope.
I was going to say, you guys didn't place a second round of mail.
No. I think I was just so excited to do something.
Yeah.
And didn't really think about it in more detail as I should. And it just literally took one mail drop for me to say I'm out.
Isn't it crazy how quick? But it's better. It's better quickly, and it's like that. Whatever that money probably wasted, I'm assuming. Not that any dollar spent with ballpoint marketing is ever wasted.
There you go.
My neon sign just got so much bigger behind me.
Right.
But whatever you spent on that marketing drop was worth every penny to realize very early on that was not the right partnership, because it would have taken you,
And it was a good learning curve for me because I actually, from that point, waited over 2 years to actually start again.
Yeah.
Right. So not because I didn't think I could do it, but when you are at call porter and ballpoint, you get ingrained in all this. You do learn all the systems, processes, ways of doing things. You're in conversations. So now I've got all the head and heart knowledge of everything in real estate investing, which was good for me to get first and then get more into it and be a little bit more serious about it. And the same thing could be said of my business partner now. You know, he dabbled in it a little bit and figured out he too wasn't as ready as he thought he could be. And so now we're both in a better place. But yeah, like having the business partner that, you know, is kind of, you guys you balance each other out, right? That's super important too. Like Matt is that systems, numbers, processes, like he does it so freaking well. And I love the conversations, the phone, the house walkthroughs, being in front of people, you know, talking and all those kinds of things. So like those are going to be really good for us in the long run. But yeah, that was my only business breakup, was a couple of years ago.
It's just like any bad ex-girlfriend. Like you still remember them. You're like, oh, that was way better off now. But you start to realize like why you didn't marry to them and why why now you have different business partners. And it's also to your point, you got to learn so much of the business. It's almost without having to go through like the full crash course and learn the very hard way. You got to get educated in it by going through call porter and ballpoint and all that stuff and get like the degree. Like my experience at my old company, like it paid me great money and all those things, but like the true experience I took away from there was everything that I got to learn on somebody else's dime. It was the crash course to set me up for where I am now and what I'm doing now. So it's like for that I'm always forever grateful for it. But it's really cool, and I think that's a lesson to some people, because it's always like the other sexy thing to do is quit your W-2 and go all in. And I agree, if that's what you want to do, you should, but you should do it in a smart way. And are there ways that you can go learn the business while getting paid and be smart about it? And there usually is. Like I didn't even know what wholesale real estate was, and now I will never have another boss again, and I won't do anything that's not real estate. So it's really cool when you can learn the business in a different way without having to like go all in. And I love going all in. I love betting on myself, and I love taking the risks. I remember when I left, like I was like, okay, well, we've got these flips going. If I don't make another dollar, I can survive 3 months. Then we would flip another house. I'm like, I got 6 months of runway now. So it's like I was setting up these parameters where it was like, you can blank, you can do nothing, but in 6 months you have to figure it out. And eventually the runway got so long, I'm like, I can breathe a little bit now. Like we're good. Like it's working, and then it's crazy that 4 years later of being self-employed, still working, good days and bad days, but it's still working. So it's eventually you can jump off and take the risk, but if you can make it more calculated and learn on someone else, then it's much easier.
Yeah. There's one thing you said, I don't even remember if it was on this call or if it was on our call the other day, but I think it's good because what we have on our listener side is a lot of new people, right, that are getting new or getting started. They've got 1 or 2 deals under their belt, something like that. And I've had some feedback from people that want more practicality type stuff, right? But one thing you said that I think can kind of tie into that is everything is figure outable. And what I've seen and what I've done is if stuff has gotten hard, people give up and don't figure it out. Don't figure out whatever the challenge is with the deal, right? Like maybe it's messed up title or something with the heirs is not going right and you have to get 19 different signatures. Like, we've had deals like that where you're like, I need 12 signatures on this house. Like, what the hell?
So you're telling me you have a solution?
Yeah, we found a solution. Yeah, exactly. So, how is that played into your entrepreneurial journey is keeping that mindset of everything is figure outable, whatever comes up.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually have that like on a sign in my house. So it reminds me.
There's your neon sign right there.
Done. Done.
Everything's figure outable.
Get that order, Justin, because ballpoint marketing will rock your socks.
I'll order it today.
Yeah. So it's one of those things, and I think some people, it's always easier. People can be like, oh, it's always easier said than done. You knew this, or you learned that, or you had this advantage. But no, I think if everybody zooms out a little bit, any challenge that you had, whether it was business, whether it was personal, like you're still standing. Like it didn't kill you. If you look back at any major challenge that you've ever had, you eventually figured it out. Now, was it the outcome that you wanted? That's debatable. Things won't always work out in the way that you want them to work out, but they will work themselves out in one way, shape, or form. And there will be some sort of solution or some sort of end in sight to whatever that problem is. And it comes to everything. Like, look, I mean, real estate is so cool because it's really big swings. And it's really like when you hit something big, you make a lot of money. But in the same sense, like it's really big misses as well. And, we're very controlled by, like, we can do everything in our power, but we can't fully control the market. We can make really smart and informed decisions, but we're in a cyclical business. And there's a lot of other powers that be that pull strings that start influencing how we can make our money, what the market's going to do, what buyer demand will be. So you have to figure it out. You have to just press on and you have to deal with the adversities and the challenges. And I think if you have that mindset when you're looking at something and you're like, this might suck, this might not be the outcome that I wanted, but I'm going to get it done. Or whether the porn star in the trailer is not signing today and you were supposed to make X and now you're only going to make Y. Well, you can figure it out if you send someone over there to talk to her with the docs and all this stuff. Like everything has a solution at the end of the road. It just might not always be what you want, but it's about pressing on. And if you want to do the entrepreneurship thing, like there will be times where it's really easy. Like when we started, I was like looking back at it and it's like, it was really easy. It was like 2020, 2021, and 2022. Like you had to be an idiot not to make money flipping houses.
You started at a great time.
It was amazing. It was amazing. I quit my job 3 months before COVID though. So I was like, did I just make the dumbest mistake that I've ever made? Yeah. I could have chilled with a really great salary while the world was shutting down. And instead I was like, okay, now I'm out here on the streets. Like, let's do this and figure this out, and,
try not to breathe on sellers.
Yeah. I was like, we were buying flips that like people had to be out, like, we're with post-doc agreements, and then they're like, COVID, we can't leave the house. We've got nowhere to go. I'm like, I need to flip that house. That was part of my 3-month runway. Like, you need to get out. Couldn't do it. But it was figure outable. So it's one of those things where if you press long enough, but it's going to be up and down. And the more that you're just at peace with the fact that there's going to be good days and good times and bad times, it'll push you to keep figuring stuff out. Because if your first road of adversity, like you quit, then like kind of like a bad business partnership, like you learn early on, like you're not cut out for this.
You're not meant for it. Yeah.
And it's like, you've got to, and there's a caveat to it. Like you could keep pushing. Like I'm a very optimistic person. And sometimes I worry that I'm too optimistic because I could just try and see all the good that can happen of something. And I will keep pushing to a detriment to make sure that like, hey, like, I don't want to say like ignoring certain things, but you're like, that's, I'm going to push that to the side. We can keep going. So they're beige flags. They're not red flags. They're more beige flags. And we're going to push through them a little bit. So I think it's that mindset of being able to just push through, and you'll figure it out if you try hard enough or you ask enough people. And I think that takes a certain level of humbleness. Justin, you've been helping us a ton with our data and certain things where it's like, Jason, I've been doing this for so long that we unintentionally adopted that's the way it's been done for years mentality.
Right.
And being able for us to be humble enough to be like, hey, like, well, this isn't working. Like something's not working. Like who can we go to? And we got on calls with you and Ryan, and helped us dialed in some stuff that we were blind to. We had the blinders on. So I think it's like when you hit those roadblocks, like start looking around, like who can you ask? What can you research? What can you figure out? And if you push through it, you'll realize like it really wasn't that big of a roadblock. And there's a whole other thing with anxiety and the mental health roadblocks that you put in for yourselves. And, so I think it's just that ability to push on. And once you do it a couple times, you'll realize that you're stronger than you think you are. And your capabilities are much greater than you give yourself credit for.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I loved what you said just a few minutes ago about
the porn star in the trailer.
What's that?
About the porn star in the trailer.
No, well, actually, don't let me forget what I'm gonna say. But I do have a question about the lady in the trailer. How did it come to? How did you find out that she was a porn star. Like she calls in, says, "Hey, I have this trailer to sell in BTW. I'm a,
Well, it's really important to find the true motivation. So when you're on the phone with a seller, it's you want to dig deep. So if you are not finding out that your seller had a past history of doing porn, then I don't know that you're digging deep enough on your calls.
The rapport's not there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have not listened to the call. So our agent that took the call was thrilled to tell us about it, and he knows her porn name. I don't want to find out. But so he dug very deep on the call. And he didn't go. He didn't go to the property in person.
Weird.
Yeah. The whole situation in itself is very weird. But I didn't mean to derail you with the porn star in the trailer.
No, that's funny. That's funny. I like that. No, but I like what you said when in this business you have a lot of big swings, right? And there are a lot of big misses. And there's are you familiar with Jim Rohn?
Yes.
Do you know that name?
Yes.
One of motivational speakers. I listened to him, back when I was in the military, just for, I can't even, I just found him or something like that. But there's always been one thing that he's always, that I've always remembered of what he said is like in baseball, right? People that hit, get like a 2 to 3 point, batting average are making millions of dollars, which means they're missing 8 out of 10 times. You know what I'm saying? And he's like, for you and your business, if you're missing 8 out of 10 times and you're making millions of dollars, right? You're having some big swings. And that I've always remembered that from Jim Rohn is like, don't let that beat you down, like missing and failing and, not hitting where you want to be. You can still be a phenomenal business owner. You can still be absolutely successful with missing. It's the big targets that really mean, the money at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's the cool part about real estate. And anyone who doesn't say that they're in it for the money, I mean, you can enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. Like I enjoy flipping houses. I enjoy the before and afters and all those things. But that's really, there's not a lot of industries and businesses where you can make such big wins in single transactions, but then you also have to be prepared for you're going to take massive losses. And it's just, and if you're not taking enough risks. There was plenty of times where we were crushing it on flips and you're like, I think we might make 60 and we make 100, or, hey, I think we're going to make 30 and we lose 20. And being able to persevere through those things and just know it's a numbers game. And if you win more than you lose, you'll come out on top type deal. So yeah, it's and that's that perseverance thing. But it's also, when we're talking about the systems and processes, right now it's a tough time in real estate. I don't care who you are. It is not the easiest time to be in this business. And if you can make it work right now and you can be profitable and maybe not as profitable as you want or any of those things, but if you can make it work now and you can be prepared when things start to change, the money will flow so easily. And it's kind of getting prepared. And if you can survive these rainy days when the sun comes out, then it gets way easier. And you've made it through some shit already. So you're ready for the easy stuff.
Yeah.
Well, and we're in like you said, real estate cyclical. So we're in one of those phases where things are just more challenging, right? I had heard someone talk about it recently. It said if you were killing it in 2020, 2021, 2022, you didn't do shit as a business owner. The market did it all for you. You jumped in at an easy point where you haven't really experienced what it's like to truly be a business owner and deal with the challenges and the bad times. And I don't want to say the bad times, but the more challenging and difficult, and you have to think differently and understand things a little bit differently. Be more creative. Yeah, exactly. Get more, there's a guy we had on our podcast recently that his name's Devin Robinson, and it's either North or South Carolina. I always forget. One of those states, though, basically made it almost illegal to wholesale. And they could have, he was doing good, making good money, made it very restrictive. And it's they could have just folded up shop and said, screw it, we're going to move on to a different area. But they figured out how to do options contracts on everything instead. And now they're even more successful than they were before. But most of their competitors didn't do that. Most of those competitors are not there anymore. And that's why they're successful, is they figured out, like I said, everything's figured out.
I was going to be cheesy. I was going to be cheesy, but it's like, it's so cheesy, but it's like, if you think about it with all the challenges, like there is almost always a solution. And I don't know if it was Jim Rohn, but there was somebody, and I'm hoping I don't butcher this, but it's like, you get paid in direct proportion to the level of problem you solve. And tying back into just the amount of money that can be made in real estate, like you have to solve problems. Like that's how you make money. And to those clients like of yours, all those other guys are out and they solved a very big problem. They found a workaround for a change in their industry, and that set them apart from everybody else. And now they will prosper because of it. So that's why you get paid what you get paid in this business. And it's a massive risk versus reward situation as well.
Yeah, that was definitely Jim Rohn.
Was it?
Yeah, because he also says like similar to that, like service to many leads to greatness. When you're able to serve someone, figure out their problems, kind of thing.
And it's true, and it's and I always struggle with this, and we'll see how this goes over for most people. But wholesale is not the at the end of the day, unless you're really, really saying everything that you're going to do with that property after, like you're immediately selling it to an investor for more money. Now we can say that you have the purest of intentions, but I do think that there is always a little bit of a gray area to this business when it comes to that, and people wanting to think that they're solving the problem the best that they can. But at the end of the day, if I make $20,000 off selling it to an investor, should that seller have gotten more money than they did? So I do, but the trade-off is solving their problem. And we have so many sellers that just have problems that seem unsolvable to them or that other people. And I think that's one of our big advantages. That Jason and I've seen so many transactions that like you don't surprise us when you call us anymore. So it's like we will solve your problem, and we push that to our agents on the phone all the time. Tell them not to worry about it. Tell them we will solve this problem for them, and that's why we get paid what we get paid, and that's why we're in business, and why you went with two other investors, and you're back calling us. And maybe they offered to pay you more than we did, but at the end of the day, you still own that property, and had you have sold it to us in the first place, your problem would have already been solved. So I think that's the big reminder is, and that's why the business exists, in my opinion.
Yeah. I like that. Let's kind of pivot a little bit, and if it comes back to real estate, I'm totally fine with that too. But
usually does.
I mean, we talked about this a little bit the other day, but all three of us have struggled with anxiety over the years, right? And the thing that for me, and I'm because it's interesting to me because everyone that I've talked to that's dealt with anxiety or deals with it, it's usually different, but kind of the same at the same time. Like there's different things that cause the anxiety or different reasons why they might be struggling with it, but it usually comes back to very similar things. So with one thing that I've noticed with it is it comes in waves, right? And if you're a business owner and you've never dealt with it, like we were talking about yesterday, like I was 27, I'd never dealt with anxiety before. I had my first panic attack and I was like, I'm about to die. Like it's 2 a.m. I just woke up and I'm like, what the hell is going on right now? Do I need to go to the hospital? Like what's going on? And it's one of those things where it's like, you almost don't realize how much it can affect your day to day until you like start to work on it. Right. So I'm kind of just curious on what your experience has been, and Vinny, yours as well. I don't know if we've talked about it a ton on these calls yet, but what's kind of been your experience with that, and how's that played a role into what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, it's just cool to talk about because I don't think enough people talk about it, and there's always more of a stigma around, I think, men's mental health than there is anybody else's, because you're just supposed to power through. You're just supposed to, you got this, and yeah, exactly. A brute force, and you're, I'm trying not to curse, so I'm trying to like rethink my words. But like, if you can't do this or you have to take that medication, like you're a little bitch. Like, toughen up. I don't know. You can bleep that out if we have to, but you're good. I think all right. Now you're gonna let lion out of the cage. So I think it's one of those things where it's cool to talk about, and I think that the more that I talk about it, the more that I realize other people are struggling with it. Like it came up when we were talking, and you guys were like, oh yeah, we're all on medication for it. I'm like, oh, me too. And it's like, you can share like little hacks and like things like, oh yeah, this worked really well for me. And, this is when I realized it. And like, oh yeah, did you feel like you were having a panic attack and somebody was stepping on your chest also? Like, were you curled up in a ball? And it's when you start to realize those things, you start to realize you don't have to live like that. And I think that's the biggest thing. And I'm pretty sure I have a book behind me that's called Redefining Anxiety. And it's, I try and look at it as it has its pros and cons, because I think it's gotten me to where I am, in good and bad ways. And I think it can be a superpower if harnessed and if used for good. And I started to realize like my form of anxiety and superpower, at least when it pertained to business, was I would huge sense of urgency to respond to an email, to respond to a text, to respond to a call, to get something done. If you needed something from me, I wanted you to know that I was on top of it and I was doing it. And it was always like that anxiety to perform. And I still have that. That doesn't go away. That Lexapro hasn't taken that away, but it's probably muted it a little bit. But I think a lot of it ties back into the personal life and going home at the end of the day and being able to check out, because, trying to think of the best way to explain it, but like I would struggle with realizing just how lucky I am, and being able to sit back and enjoy very good moments with my wife and my daughter. And my leg would be tapping up and down with like restless leg syndrome, and I would be realizing like I'm not fully here. Like I'm sitting here at dinner in a beautiful house with a beautiful family, and like everyone would dream for this, but I'm sitting here running 1,000,000 miles an hour, worrying how I'm going to fix the next problem. And take things to the next level and make sure that everyone is taken care of and making sure everybody on my team can eat. And, and I think that's kind of like heavy lies the crown when you own your own business. So I think that the anxiety and stuff then becomes magnified. And also for me, I think the biggest turning point was, I think I could get away with, like you were, saying you suffer from a panic attack or anxiety attack. I think prior to having our daughter, I think I was letting that stuff happen because, my poor wife, she would have to deal with it. Right. And it was like, but at the end of the day, like I could walk away, I could leave the house for a little bit and go for a drive, and I could like get past it, and she would have to deal with it, which was so unfair to her. But then once we had our daughter, I realized like, I can't be that dad in front of her. Like I can't lose my cool. I can't feel anxious. I can't not be present. I can't not do those things. So for me, that was where it was like the wake up call, where it was like, this is probably affecting your marriage, your business, and now it's going to affect my daughter. And it was unfair that the business and the wife didn't matter enough to do something about it, but my daughter did. That was where I really realized like, okay, you should try something. And I hated taking Tylenol for a headache, and then started seeing a therapist, started seeing a psychiatrist, and they were all like, you need some medication to help balance this. I'm like, cool, let's try it out. And it's been an absolute game changer. And you start to realize, you're like, oh, this is how the other half lives. It doesn't suffer from crippling anxiety.
Like, is this what normal life is?
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, just waking up on the edge of like anxiety all the time. Like this is wild.
So I think that's, we all have different coping mechanisms, and some are bad, some are good. Some people are like, oh yeah, well I have anxiety and I work out, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool for you. I suck at that. Even though I know that I should do it, it's just not, it's not one of those things that I've been good at implementing. But I know that I need to, because now I'm like, well, look, the medication works. So now let me go try some some better approaches and try being more mindful and all those things. But the more you talk about it, the more you realize that people are either suffering from it and doing something about it, suffering from it and not, or just don't even realize that they're actually dealing with it. And I think it's also just a product of our environment in this day and age, where you're so tied in all the time. Like you just can't get away from it. Like your phone is always going. My email is dinging. I've got 14 emails. My phone, the entire screen is lit up with notifications over here. So it's like you have those things. And that's my anxiety right now, is like, I'm assuming that, fortunate enough that we have a team. I know if something's on fire, like Jason's going to handle it, or somebody else is going to, but those things are happening and I'm not tending to them. So you start to realize, and when you recognize your anxiety, you can start doing something about it, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. And you said something right at the beginning too, that like, it's especially for like men's mental health, I could say it's still, which is wild, kind of a taboo subject, right? And for me, I was the exact same way, where it was like, I didn't want to take anything. I was like, nope. Like the way we grew up, like just dealt with it. You're fine. You don't, push it down. Don't talk about your feelings. Like, it's fine. And I don't think it was intentional, but like my dad grew up without a dad. So like didn't really know how to do any of that. Yeah. Right. So he was trying to figure shit out for himself. And, for me, like, dude, I fought it for so long where I was like, no, I don't want to take anything. I don't want to take anything. I feel like I'm on the verge of like freaking out all the time, but I just don't want to take anything. And then finally did. And it was, it takes a couple weeks, but once I did, I was like, holy shit, like I've been driving my wife batshit crazy. I'm sure, like, like I have to.
Luckily, you're so good looking that she kept you around despite all of the other stuff.
And it was wild too, because at that point she had never dealt with anxiety either, so I could tell like there'd be times where she'd probably be frustrated, where it's like, okay, I feel like this just happens all the time now. And then luckily, I want to say luckily, because that's a horrible way of saying that, but like she ended up starting to deal with some anxiety and started to understand that as well when her dad passed away. And it was one of those things where she was like, I did not realize what this was like. Like it's very hard to explain to somebody that hasn't dealt with it before.
Yeah.
And I can't stress it enough. Like if it's something you've dealt with, whether if it's anxiety, depression, whatever it is, like go talk to somebody, get the help that is out there. Cause there are some that you can take that you don't want to, like long-term, like what's the, like Xanax, like that's not one you want to be on consistently or daily.
Slippery slopes.
Yeah. Like those can become addictive very, very easily. But a lot of the like SSRIs and things like that have been super, super helpful. And even for me, I told you guys yesterday, like I quit smoking weed on Christmas Eve and I was using that to help with anxiety. And like within a week and a half started having panic attacks again. And I was like,
it's really good for it.
in fairness, it worked out really well, but
it works.
And for me, I quit because I was like, I'm too ambitious and I'm feeling myself being lazy and I'm not getting all the things done that I want to do. So my thought was like, let's try it for a year and let's see what I can get done in a year. Like, and I'll probably stay off of it, other than maybe occasional kind of stuff. But realized during that time, like I had taken my medication down to like a non-existent dose basically. And I did the same thing. Like I fought it for 3 months where I was like, nope, don't want to be back on medication anymore. And then once I finally did and changed it and talked to a doctor, he's like, yeah, your body's freaking the hell out right now because it's used to having weed in there to help you. And now it doesn't. Now you've got this difference here.
So you need this medication.
Yeah, he's like, you need this. He's like, don't go back to weed if you're coming back onto this. I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
And like just in 4 weeks, like the difference is wild. Like I wake up feeling normal now. So it's one of those things that it's almost hard to ask for help with it or go and do that, but it's worth every second of it.
Well, what's funny too is like, I do all of my appointments online. I'd never leave the office to get any of my medications or do any of those things. So it's like, people are like, oh, it's really hard to like make it to the doctor and to do all this stuff. And it's like, no, everything's figure outable. I didn't feel like going to the doctor, but I knew that I needed help. So I was like, all right, let me find how I can do all of this online. And I have all my calls and my prescriptions are ready and I pick them up on my drive home. Nice. So it's easy. And I swear this podcast isn't sponsored by Lexapro today, but right. But I think not enough people talk about it because it's also one of those things most people don't want to. And, I think as years have gone on, I've kind of like humbled myself just in different ways because I've always considered myself a fine line between cocky and confident. And nobody ever wants to. That may have been a Kid Rock song, but it's nobody ever wants to admit that they're either not doing what they want to do. And it's like, it's kind of, especially with social media, everybody's just posting the highlight reel and everybody wants to talk about how they're crushing it and they're happy. And it's like, everything is perfect. And it's like, the reality is it's not. The more that people can talk about like, hey, I'm suffering from this anxiety, or, hey, my business has this challenge today, or my relationships are having this challenge, whatever it might be, you start to realize that other people will let their guard down around you too. And it's like everybody doesn't have to put on this tough guy, successful facade and all these things. And it's cool. When things are good, like enjoy it. But when things are bad, like be realistic to it and know that other people are struggling too. Like everybody is going through something. Some of us are better at handling it than others. Some of us, certain things weigh us down more than others. So I think it's it's just the reality of the situation that there's a bunch of shit going on, and it's cool to not be okay. And once you start realizing that and you start letting your guard down, that's why I'm so open. If anyone ever talks to me about anything, I'm like, hell yeah, I'm on Lexapro, like game changer. Like if you're feeling this way, like try working out, try doing all these things. If you find out it's still not working for you, go dig a little bit deeper and see, because the other side is it's glorious. And I'm still anxious, and I still, not numb to the world, and I still have all the emotions that come with life and being a dad and business owner and all that stuff. But I can enjoy it a little bit more than I did before. Yeah. And a little bit of pot helps too. And there's nothing a little joint can't fix here.
It definitely is a game changer. Like, I know this is a real estate podcast, but if you're listening and you feel like, you're dealing with something like this, absolutely 100% go figure it out. Like, get help, talk to a doctor. For me, probably a lot of my anxiety came obviously from, a tour in Iraq. PTSD is going to do a lot to you in your life, whether you realize it or not. But also, having 5 kids and a bunch of different things. But for me, like, I noticed I was having it because I would just get these feelings, and the only way I really knew how to describe it to people was like, that feeling when you get pulled over by a cop. Yeah, I feel that's all day, every day, like for no reason. And I was like, why am I feeling like this? I just because I missed a phone call, I'm not in trouble. So I just like, I had this feeling, and it was crippling. It would affect me and Susie and our kids, and just the way I would get just pissed off at my kids for no apparent reason. And then I would have to go, really the only way that I could really find ease was to go into the bathroom, turn off the lights, be in complete pitch black dark, and sit on the floor and just breathe. And I was like, I can't keep doing this. Like, this is never going to work. And so, getting on medication and help balancing things out, I am a far better husband. I'm a far better dad. I'm a far better friend. I'm just all around far better person. Not that I was a bad person before, but I was just hurt. Like, I was, in pain and didn't know how to express it properly until a doctor told me really what was going on, and my therapist and stuff. Right. But Justin, similar to you, I didn't want to get on meds because my family has a really, a huge history of addiction, alcohol, drugs, all kinds of things. And I have never had an addiction to anything, and I didn't want to get put into that category as my family and being like, oh, well, now he's on meds too,
Right. You didn't want to find out if you had that.
Here's a tally. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, my therapist kept saying, you need this, you need this, you need this. And I would say, no, I'm not doing it. And really it was Susie, she was like the person that I put all of my faith and trust in. To hear it from her meant more than anybody else. And that's when I was like, okay, I really need to be consistent with this.
Yeah. And it's one, thank you for your service. And also thank you for your service as being a father of 5. That's a whole nother battle. That's a whole nother battle that you're in daily. I told you before, you've got one of my good friends. You one-upped him by 1. He's got 4, and I watched that go down. And it's you guys are in your own battles. It's a lot. We are. It's a lot, and it's it'll be a lot of fun, but it's. Yeah, I can only imagine, because one got me on medication, but it was mostly because I just wanted to be a better person. Because I've been there, man. I've been like in the dark room, like sitting down. I'm like, okay, like you can't be like this. Like you can't operate. And I think it's like, especially it's kind of funny because I feel like a lot of people that have anxiety and or have these like things, like they end up in these entrepreneurship like roles and positions and all this stuff. So there's probably some sort of study out there somewhere by far smarter people than us that correlates to why. Mm-hmm. But it also is this is not like, these businesses and stuff are not the best businesses when you have anxiety and all of these emotions going on. So it's nice to be able to dial it down just a hair and have the medications help you with it, because it makes you better in every facet.
Yeah. Well, and then another thing I've realized is letting go. You guys, you don't have as much control as you think you do at the end of the day.
Yep.
And that's been really helpful for me too, is just being a little bit more at ease. At the end of the day, we can try to control things, but we don't have as much control, if any.
We think we're in control. There's kind of control over anything.
Everyone takes everything so seriously,
Yeah,
and focuses so hard on stuff. And the way that started to help me kind of realize this was realizing that, like, no matter what you're gonna do, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of your life, like that's gonna happen. And worrying about some of the small, minute, what might seem like a big thing at the moment, the one thing I always try and remind myself is, like, am I going to remember this moment in 5 years? No, I'm not.
There's some sort of quote with that where if it doesn't matter in 5 years, don't spend more than like 5 seconds on, or 5 minutes, or something along those lines.
It's easier said than done, but it's something I have to remind myself a lot, where it's just like, you're stressing out about something, like Vinny said, there was something you said, was like, I'm not in trouble, like that's something that I would have calls with my business partner at times. And I'm like, why do I feel like I'm going to be in trouble? Like, first off, hey, we're business partners. You're not my boss. I'm not your boss. Like, we work together on the same level. Why do I feel like this? But, it's one of those things where it's like, a lot of people are living for the end result of something, right? The house, the car, the business, the whatever it is, and you miss out on what's actually going on. And that's like when your life is being lived. Like, I had someone explain it to me this way, is like, the future will never come. The past was never a thing. You only live in that moment. When it happened in the past, it was in the moment at that time.
Yep.
When something happens in the future, it'll be in the moment at that time. Like, you're focusing and worrying about stuff that's so far off when it's not actually ever going to happen the way that you're expecting it to 99% of the time. And, like, you are missing out on what that individual moment is and actually enjoying life, where it's like,
you're not in the moment at all. You're thinking about
and you're not enjoying anything, but for me, and I know just from talking to you two guys, it's like, when you aren't on a medication, though, you're almost in survival mode, and you can't focus on anything else and do that. So it's why getting that help or talking to people or whatever is so important, to be able to start to live and be able to be in the moment, because I'm sure people would be listening and be like, well, yeah, but I'm just anxious all the time. How the hell am I supposed to be in the moment, when I'm like this? And it's like, I get it. I do.
Yeah.
But getting help and working through stuff allows you to do that, and it gets better with time, is what I've seen.
Yeah. Well, and you become more cognizant of it too. And I think it's almost like, I think it's like the age-old thing. It's like admitting that you have a problem is the first step. And it's like, once you start realizing, like, you had those emotions and you had those feelings, you're like, what are these? Like, why am I suffering from, like, what is going on? And then it's like, once you can actually, like, pinpoint it, then it starts to make a lot more sense, and you can catch yourself at times. Like, I'll catch myself. I'm like, those aren't real thoughts. Like, I'm just being anxious for no reason right now. And we have quote somewhere in here on a plaque that's like, things are often worse in imagination than in reality, because both Jason and I suffer from anxiety. So it's like reminding ourselves that, like, things aren't really that bad. And it's like, in your head, you imagine things to be a certain way. And even though, like, I consider myself an optimist, I still will assume that, like, well, what if, like, if things are going really good, I'll, like, go through, like, a mental filing cabinet and be like, there's got to be something bad that I'm missing somewhere, right? And I'm like, I got to think about that, because I can't focus on these good things, right? And that's been my biggest thing lately, is trying to sit back and enjoy it. Like, I know how fortunate I am. I know, and I've worked my ass off for it, to have a family and to do the things that I'm, fortunate enough to do. But it's like sitting back and enjoying those moments sometimes, instead of thinking about the next problem. And a lot of that comes from just putting down your phone, trying to be present, and trying to, like, reprogram yourself to enjoy it. Justin, that's why I love seeing when you go camping with your family, like, trying to get out. And I think I got mad at you when you called me. I'm like, aren't you camping right now? Like, don't call me. Don't you call me right now? The mail will be there on Monday.
Yep. No, it's I mean, we went
especially if it's ballpoint marketing. Especially if it's ballpoint marketing, it'll definitely be there on Monday.
Carlos is earning a sign.
Yeah. That's his optimist in there. Yeah.
The optimist.
There you go.
Hey, my new mail file just went out to you guys yesterday. We're changing to postcards. We're testing all kinds of stuff. So it's and it's the optimist in me. I'm like, this is great. Like, we're making some changes right now. Justin's helped us with our file. Like, we're gonna crush it, and it'll all work. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it's figure outable regardless.
I think you guys will be happy with it.
Oh, the ballpoint part will work. Will everything else work after that? Will the market be kind to us? That's
There you go.
That's fair.
That's the part we can't control. But we know that they'll be printed well and handwritten by those.
And it's figure outable.
And it's figure outable. And that's same thing with the anxiety. Same thing with any real estate problem. And none of it's that serious. Everybody is so like, I'm building my business and I'm doing this, and it's like, no, dude. Just like, what's the point? Why are you building your business? Why are you doing it? Is it so that you can
having fun? Or are you miserable all the time?
Yeah, and it's like if you're miserable, like just go get a regular job and check out at 5. Like, but it's everybody always wants that next thing, and you're just not enjoying what you currently have, because if you zoomed out and you looked back 5 years, you're probably living the life that you dreamed that you would have.
Yes, that's a great point.
And it's like
5 years ago, Justin would be jealous of where I'm at now.
Yeah,
and there's times now where I'm like, I don't feel like I'm anywhere.
and that and that's. It's a good and a bad quality, I think, because it'll push you to do the next thing, and it'll push you to keep striving for more so that you don't get complacent. But at the same time, like, you got to give yourself some grace, and you got to zoom out and say, well, shit, I've done a lot. Like, look at where I was 5 years ago, whether that was financially, mentally, any of those things. Like, are you in a better place now than you were? Like, it's pretty fucking cool. Like, that you should be proud of it. And I think we don't do that enough because we're always kind of hoping for more. I think when I was talking to you about our numbers, I'm like, yeah, like, cool where we are now. Like, people would love that. And it's like, I'm just going to keep pushing the goal line, but I do need to enjoy it where I am now and be proud of certain things, even if they're not exactly where I want everything to be. So I think that sometimes we need that reminder, or be surrounded by people that'll remind you to zoom out a little bit if you're doing a crap job yourself.
Yep. Awesome. This is great. This is a lot of fun.
We covered a whole bunch of different
topics. We did.
A lot of stuff.
Covered all kinds of stuff.
Terrorism, anxiety, real estate, processes,
porn stars, trailers.
Right. Don't forget about that.
Yeah.
Well, Carlos, I really appreciate you hopping on, man. I'm glad we were able to do this. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully you had fun as well, and we'll get you a new neon sign.
I had a blast. I feel like being invited to a podcast is being invited to like someone's clubhouse, and just like they let me in. Like, I had to try and fit in with the lights and all this stuff. So I really appreciate you guys having me. And at the end of the day, I hope that if we helped one person with our babbling for the last little bit, if we helped one person, we killed it today.
We did.
So really appreciate you guys having me. Look forward to doing this again sometime.
Yeah, dude. If you're ever in St. Louis, we need to hang out.
Oh, I just actually bought a building there for $3.5 million. You guys may have heard of it, the skyscraper there.
Oh yeah, were you the one that bought that?
Which one?
It's
the
all
building downtown.
It's all over the news.
Round one.
Didn't it sell for like 200?
The one with the green roof.
Didn't it sell for like 200 million a couple of years ago and just sold for 3.5 recently?
Yeah, it sold for 200 million before, and they offloaded it for $3.5 million.
Yeah. Just have my neon sign delivered there. We're moving in. We're coming to St. Louis.
Wild.
I'm a big Nelly fan, so we can go hang out with the St. Lunatics, and we'll make
Cardinals.
You guys are good for the ribs too, so we'll have a whole day.
Hey, I know all the good rib places.
Done. Jason and I are boarding flights. We'll be there soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks guys for hopping on today, showing up, and appreciate you guys. And if you're listening, make sure you like, subscribe, give us a follow, share with your friends, all that fun stuff. And we'll see you next week.